choose which footage and which materials to use, and particularly the Zapruder film.
Yeah, well, one of the most surprising things in making the film was how much footage we were able to discover that had never been seen before. And we would go through these archives and like just we were astounded by all this new stuff and couldn't figure it out because so many people have gone over this. The conspiracy theorists, or movies that put forth an idea that there's a conspiracy. These guys have like gone through the archives again and again for over 40 years. There's tons of movies have been made about it. And then every 5 years on the anniversary of the assassination, the networks go through and they look at all this stuff and come up with their movies, the sort of the debunking movies. So we thought, well, it's going to be really hard to find anything new. Well, it turned out there was tons of stuff that was new. And I think the reason for that is the networks who are making the debunking movies, they always sort of, they send their like 20-year-old interns off into the archives and they end up like pulling out all the footage that they've used for the one they did 5 years earlier. So the same footage gets recycled again and again. And then the people who are making films to prove a certain theory about the assassination are only looking for certain things that'll prove, what they want, their argument. So we were taking a more broad-based thing and looking at how the assassination was talked about and referred to and debated and argued over in the years following the assassination. So, and nobody really ever done that. And it had always been like people were contributing to this debate, but nobody had ever looked at the debate and like, well, what is this debate? What does it tell us about it? Why is everybody so fascinated with this thing? What are the questions it raises and what has it done? And so we were able to discover, a lot of really new and interesting footage that hasn't been seen before.
And did you feel like you couldn't do a film without including the Zapruder film, or?
Yeah, the Zapruder film is an iconic thing, which is, that's like the ultimate Rorschach test. People look at it and say they see one thing, or people say, well, if you look at the Zapruder film, it's obvious that X, Y, or Z happened, and anybody who thinks otherwise is a fool or a liar or a part of the conspiracy. It's actually much more complicated than that because the Zapruder film is this two-dimensional image of a three-dimensional event, and it's representative of that event. There's information in it, but it has become iconographic, and I don't think you can make a film about the assassination without it. But it's interesting. We don't go through a sort of a frame-by-frame analysis in the film. We maybe do that in the DVD extras, but in the film, we treat it for what it is and how people saw it, and it's got a very interesting history. I mean, the film itself was actually never shown on television until 1975, which is kind of remarkable. I mean, I didn't know that when I started making this thing. Everybody thinks, well, it was on. They think, the people who were alive when the assassination happened think that they saw it on television right then and there. Well, they didn't, and the fact that they didn't contributed to the conspiracy. Like, well, why is this being withheld? So, it's definitely an iconic part of American culture. Is this incredible film that's been argued over for decades.
So you spoke to a lot of different people during this documentary. Which interviewees would you say gave you particularly good insights?
Well, I think they all did. Everybody. I mean, we've interviewed a lot of people, who believe or who are the main sort of proponents of the idea that the Warren Commission had gotten it wrong, like Mark Lane and Josiah Thompson, to name just two. Mark Lane was probably the most famous and certainly the first sort of pioneer on that. For the many people sort of followed that trail, including Garrison sort of took off where Lane went, and most of the conspiracy theories. And I hate to call it that, but for lack of a better term, most people who are saying that the Warren Commission got it wrong are picking up on the trail that Lane started. So he's a pivotal person. He's in the film, and I think one of the most interesting people we interviewed would be Norman Mailer, because Norman Mailer spent his entire adult life post Kennedy totally believing that there was a conspiracy and that it involved the CIA, and it informed a lot of his books, a lot of his writing, and he would talk about it a lot. It was very much it wasn't something that he just thought about from time to time. It was very much sort of upfront in his thinking and his view of the world throughout this turbulent period in our history, in which Mailer was a major spokesman and very much sort of a spokesman of his generation in a sense. And then in the right after the collapse of the Soviet Union, he and Larry Schiller got access, the sort of first access to the KGB records of Oswald when he was in Russia, because he defected to Russia. And there was an idea at that time that somewhere in those records, there was a bunch of new information, would be the key to whether or not Oswald was involved in either Soviet intelligence or American intelligence, which Mailer believed. Well, in the course of 5 years of writing the book, he came full circle and ended up coming out the other side and believing that Oswald actually did it by himself, without outside influence, and indeed did kill President Kennedy. So he's really one of the few people that we could find who would go on record as having changed his mind about this. I think most people's ideas are fixed and they're inflexible. So it was really nice to go on a journey with him, because it's totally reasonable to believe there was a conspiracy. I personally don't, but many people I know and trust and have a tremendous respect for do believe there was a conspiracy. So I wanted to explain to some degree to